Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Mark.
Good morning, Marcella. Good morning, family.
Yes. Welcome. Come on in, Legacy Builders. As always, let me know who's joining. Good morning, Rhonda. Good morning, Legacy
Good morning,
family.
Sheila.
Morning, Sheila. Great to see you. Daniel, good morning. Tamika, I see you watching. Good morning. I'm sure you're getting your tea together. Let me know what you're drinking, tea, coffee, water, whatever your beverage of choice is. Let us know. Come on in and welcome. And if you are watching the replay, I am so glad you are here. As always, my name is Marcella Mullen Williams, and I am joined with Mark Mullen. We are the co-founders of a Legacy Builder Group where we help families create impactful, multi-generational legacy wealth. There is a difference. So let's keep, I see, come on in. Hey there, Lisa. So great to see you join us this morning, Seeking Grace. Tamika, I look forward to seeing what tea you're drinking. So delicious blueberry, basil, mint iced tea. Oh, she has
Mhm.
these great varieties, Mark. I just love it. I'm going to go ahead and sip my basic herbal tea.
I'm
And
going to
one
have
day,
my hot chocolate.
right. And one day I'm going to be grown up like Tamika and have some fancy tea. Go keep on going in. Today we continue and actually reach with the final part of our series on the monster of Wall Street, being a vigilant investor. So come on in. Oh, I see Lisa's playing hooky. That's why we get you today. So glad. So if you were not able to join us because you had to work and weren't playing hooky, we want to encourage you to go back and watch part one and part two from the previous weeks. We highly recommend you watching the replay. You'll get a lot out of today, no worries, but you'll definitely don't want to miss all the golden nuggets that Mark and I shared previously, right, Mark?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So we are beginning and we are bringing you, like I mentioned, part three. It's the final part. And as we've gone through, this has been a three-part series covering the top three reasons Bernie Madoff successfully pulled off the largest global Ponzi scheme in history. But more importantly, we are addressing important information that will increase your financial knowledge and help you elevate your financial intelligence so you can safeguard your financial future. And in order to do that, we cover three key areas in the series. First, the regulatory system, which we covered in part one. Then Mark and I went to the advisor, which was part two. We spoke about that last week. And that brings us today where we address you, the investor. So, again, if you missed those previous episodes, you definitely want to go back and watch them. As we transition into this episode, I don't know about you, Mark, but I want to find out from the community here because I know many in this group. I don't see Francesca yet, but she's usually on here. But
Oh, she's on
Sheila,
there.
he is
She's on.
okay. Okay, great. Good morning, Francesca. I know a few of our folks in here take really good notes and they pay close attention. So, what I want to do is find out, I want you just to drop in the chat just one takeaway from last week's series, last week's conversation about the advisor. So, drop in the chat as we move forward. Just let us know that you've been here, you're listening, you're paying attention. One thing that you learned, one thing that you took away from last week's conversation about the responsibilities of the advisor, things to look out for, things that you need to know and that you want to make note of. All right. Sounds good, Mark?
Sounds like a plan.
Great. So let's talk about you, the investor. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, we're not going to be, it's a little tough love today, but it's not going to be too harsh. We promise. We just really want to make sure that we cover this role that you play in navigating this very, very important role that you play in navigating your wealth building journey. That's what's the most important thing. Talked about the regulatory system, the advisors. Yeah, all that's important, but there's no role more important than yours, which is what we have to emphasize. And so, Mark, let's start unpacking this. Kyla, good morning. Check in, check the resume certification. Okay, great. Dropping the information you learned. Absolutely. Check the resume and certifications. That is a good one. Okay, Mark. So this docu series, as we address today's topic, it shed a lot of light on investor behavior. We saw it. We saw a lot of red flags. We talked about it. So this is why we're really want to emphasize why Mark and I continue to emphasize financial intelligence. We can't talk about that enough. And for those who need a refresher, I will just say with financial intelligence is again, but catch a replay on everything else, especially episode 1. Financial intelligence is your ability to make smart, responsible, value-based decisions with and about money when you're faced with difficult to deal with and competing emotions. Yes, that is the key. That is where you start. That is the starting point to becoming a vigilant investor. We can't start anyway. We got to start right there with you and your ability to manage your emotions when you're dealing with your money. That is a challenge all by itself, right, Mark?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So let's do this. Where should
Well,
we start?
well, I'm chomping at the bits here because as you're talking about emotion, I'm like trying to be still here because when we are addressing emotions, and you've probably heard me, those that work with me one-on-one, I've said this many times that the one of the biggest threats to your financial goals is your emotions, especially when it comes to investing. The emotions and logical, smart money, financial based decisions, they don't work together. We need to separate those. And one of the reasons why, especially when you looked at the video, the docu-series of Bernie Madoff, I don't know if you picked up on the number of biases that plagued the investors, aka you. And so, Marcella, this is an area that you love to talk about. So I want to bring up a couple here. The
Yes.
first one I think we both picked up on was the similarity bias, right? So
Yes.
there's that phrase that you say, if you can quote that.
Yes. So in the African American community, I don't know if other communities have this, but especially communities with people of color, there's a saying that says, "Not all skin folk is kinfolk." Let me know
Yes.
in the chat if you know what I'm talking about. Not all skin folk are
Yeah, I
kinfolk.
want to see if anyone. So Marcella, break that down when we use that term. Break that down for the group here.
Yeah, not everyone that looks like you has the best interest in mind or actually is a part of your community. A lot of times we attach ourselves to communities, which is not bad. We all have communities, right? And we are comfortable when we are surrounded with similar attributes, whether it's how we look, whether it's historical or cultural background, whether it's educational background. We're really comfortable with areas of similarity, and that causes us to form a bias. We
Yes.
saw that in the documentary, right, Mark?
Yes. Yeah. And that was part of the issue when it comes to the investor. And look, we're not saying here that it's a decision that's completely foolish. What we're saying is it doesn't matter who you're talking to. When it comes to your money, you have to be prudent, you have to be diligent, including making sure that we're just not going to blindly trust someone because of that similarity, right? You still want to do your due diligence. And it's very important to say, yeah, this might be a contributing factor you may like, but don't let it be the only thing that determines your financial decisions. So
Exactly,
that's what we
exactly.
want to address here, right? To go into a room and say, oh, well, this person, in the case with Bernie Madoff, this person is Jewish, so therefore I can trust them. Now, not all advisors did that, of course,
Yeah.
but we want to eliminate any investor, excuse me, any investor thinking that way.
And let
Yeah,
me just add, it's sad because he preyed on his Jewish community, which was so sad. And community is one of my core values.
yeah,
So that is, important. And there's various communities that I tie my identity to. We had that whole conversation. Go back and watch that tea time on identity, but there's various identities that we tie, that we build community around. And like you said, Mark, it's not a bad thing. It's just so sad when in this case where he really preyed on his community. And you just brought the point home when you said it's not, that can be a contributing factor as to why you want to work with someone. It's a beautiful thing, but it's not, cannot be the only thing. You still have to do your due diligence.
exactly, exactly. Which ties right into another one of your favorite biases, which is the herding bias. This is a huge one because we can, as we were watching the video, and then you and I sat down and talked about it and how we were gravitated towards the herding bias because when we sorry, let me slow down here. Marcella, can
I
you
know, it's
explain
so
to the
exciting.
group what is herding bias?
Herding bias is really when you are ignited or you have the feeling, you get excited about moving in a direction or taking action because everyone else is doing it. And look, what do we grow up hearing, right? Is if everyone was jumping off a cliff, would you? Or it's your parents always told us just because everyone is doing it doesn't mean you should be doing it. But yet, I mean, we could probably all say we heard that. Yet, if we're not conscious of this very real bias that's in us, that's a natural part of us, this hurting bias, then we won't even realize that because everyone is jumping off a cliff, we are following right behind them.
Exactly. I'm gonna quote Kyla here, monkey see, monkey do. I remember that one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So thank you for that. Yeah. There's probably some other good ones there too, but Kyla's one jumped out to me. But that's so important because this is a natural thing for many of us, for most of us. And unless we are aware of it, we're falling into our biological movements, our actions. And so
Mhm.
here's the thing, we as human beings have a very powerful brain. And yes, there's a primitive version of that, but then there's also that logical piece. And what we really want everybody to do is tap into the logic. That's what we really are asking you. But the first thing you have to do is be aware of these things that we may not even be aware of. So when a group, and going back to money here, when you're in an environment where everybody else is investing in something, it doesn't mean number one, it's what you need to do. You have to look at your own circumstances, situation, your risk tolerance, your time horizon, all these different components to see if this is an
Mhm.
investment that will work for me, not just because everybody else is doing it, right? The other thing that's just as important, we touched on this earlier, is that you have, just because everybody else is doing it, doesn't mean you stop doing your due diligence. It still applies. You still
Yeah.
want to make sure you're doing your part to protect your legacy, your
Mhm.
assets, your retirement, your college plan, or whatever that intentional purpose is. It is you're the gatekeeper, right? You're the gatekeeper
That
on that.
part.
Yeah, on that piece. Yeah. And just to add another layer to that, well, actually, I'm jumping ahead of myself. So so, because I'm going into when we're talking about expectations, but before we
Mhm.
go into that, Marcella, as we're talking about the hurt and bias and our acknowledgement of seeing this behavior, what was your thoughts on that? I shared mine.
Yeah, yeah. No, one of the things that really stuck out to me in the docuseries about the hurting bias, it's the exclusivity, the bubble of exclusivity that wrapped around Bernie Madoff and his firm.
Yes.
And I'm not against, companies and and firms, organizations who have an exclusive client base. I get that. I like to think that we're exclusive to legacy builders. So I understand that, but that feeling when it comes to the investor, you have to really be careful not to get caught up, especially when it comes to wanting to align yourself with a big name or a big some what you consider to be a big deal or someone that's an expert in the industry. That's all well and good to respect someone and wanting to be part of an exclusive organization. That's not a problem. What we're talking about is when that becomes a bias and you lose understanding of how it's driving your emotions, and the decisions that you're making are based off of that instead of research, instead of the due diligence that you need to be conducting. That
Mm.
makes sense to y'all?
Let's see what they're saying in the
Let me know in the
comments.
chat. We're breaking down these biases, and we want to make sure that you really understand where we're coming from with this, because it's not all or nothing that we're talking about here. There's value within some of these biases. However, when they drive your decisions, it's when it's an issue. So we really want to make sure that you're understanding how to walk that tightrope, right? So to speak.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And Marcella, as we continue down this journey of ours, we want to make sure that we want to set an expectation that's manageable, right? So this was the other thing that we got out of this docu-series, was just the lack of understanding when it comes to the marketplace and how it works. So I want to be very transparent here. If you're going into investing for the sole purpose of getting as much money as possible, and I want unimaginable rate of returns in my portfolio or whatever that investment is, that is the wrong mindset, and you're literally setting yourself up for someone to take advantage of you. And
Yes.
that's another thing that we saw. Again, we're just
Mhm.
picking the individual behaviors. And Marcella, there was one moment in the documentary that you and we were just on it, and it was when a daughter was talking about her father investing in Bernie Madoff, and she was asking questions. And
Oh,
what did the father tell her?
look, he said there was I wanna see if any of y'all remember this part. I think as a woman, this one really stood out to us. He said, yeah, she asked, "I don't understand how these numbers look this way." And he said, "Oh, don't worry your pretty little head off." Mm, okay, you already knew that lit my fire. She was asking the questions that she should have been asking. And what did he do? Y'all can put in the comments what that was. Gaslight, I don't know, gaslighting. It was, but just diminishing her,
Yeah.
disempowering her. We're going to talk more about that later.
Yes. Yeah. And that's part of the problem, right? This Well, anyway, that piece there is one issue, right? So let's go back to understanding the markets. Francesca said she remembered. Yes,
Hmm.
absolutely. Yes, right. And so why is that so significant? Because when we're talking about the market, the first thing we need to understand is understanding what are average returns in any investment you're looking at, right? So whether it's real estate, whether it's the stock market, whatever it is, understand what is the average return on these type of investments. And here's a little caveat. If it's something new and it doesn't have a historical base, automatically that should be a red flag. Because where are they getting the returns from? Off of projections of the future? That's not guaranteed. So we have
Yeah.
to look at history to tell us how these things have performed. But in understanding what is the average return, you are now aware of unexpected or really just higher than standard returns. And so with Bernie and his portfolio, he had two things going for him. Number one, he was making historical returns year over year, not just in one year. Every year of the existence of these quote unquote fake portfolios, he was making these consistent returns. In other words, almost a straight line a straight curve going up, which is unprecedented when it comes to the stock market.
Mhm.
As long as your money's in the market, you're going to be vulnerable to the up and down volatilities of the market. It's just the nature. When people say, oh, the market's going down, well, it's supposed to go down. That's what it does. But it should go back up. That's what it does. Again, look at history to see that it goes up and down, but overall, it goes up 100% of the time. But if you're going into investment thinking, oh, well, I want 20% rate of return, red flag, or someone is promising you 20%
Yes.
rate of return, red flag. But you have to set your mind to say, I'm not coming in this looking for 20% rate of returns because that's unrealistic.
Yes.
You
It's
have
a
to make sure you're equipped enough, right, Marcella?
right, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, no, go ahead, because I know you got something good.
No, I was as you're talking, I'm just thinking how we're so prone to react to the our idea of get rich quick.
Oh, that's a whole
It,
nother subject
it's
right
it's a
there.
programming. So even when it comes to investing, where there are rules of engagement, I like to say, we still our mind still tends to go towards this get rich quick mentality, which is why it's so easy for individuals to fall prey, to
Yes,
become victimized by these scams, because we're
right.
constantly looking for that instead of being patient and really doing the things that it takes to build wealth and the proper risk and the proper safeguards to build our wealth.
Well, this is why it's so important to have manageable expectations. Because if you're looking for these unprecedented rate of returns, you're going to find that. It's not going to be legal. Okay. So let's just call it for what it is, right?
Yes,
So we have
great
to
point.
make sure that we set those standards so that we won't fall prey to our own biases, right? And so another way we can look at it is with, especially with Bernie. Again, for those who did not watch the documentary, I still suggest you do that and watch our videos in part one and part two.
Mhm.
You'll see in there how he had no losses or just about no losses in
Yeah.
any period of the portfolio performance. Even in a downward year where everybody else had negative numbers, he was showing positive returns in the market.
Yeah.
Flag.
Yeah.
Flag, okay? I'm telling you,
Right.
everyone here,
Right.
volatility comes in two forms, upward volatility and downward volatility. It's the nature of the market. It's what it does, okay? All right. So I know the news outlets and medias like to proclaim the world's ending when the market goes down, but that's not the case, okay? Because if that was the case, it would have gone down decades ago.
A long time ago, yes.
Right? So, but that's not the case. The market goes up and it goes down. That is the nature. But if you choose to ignore that nature and accept the fact that I can get positive returns year over year, even in a downward market, in the markets, then you're choosing to ignore expectations because of whatever
Mhm.
greed or unrealistic expectations you have in your performance, right, Marcella?
Yeah, absolutely. Such good points there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure, because time's going by so quick here, I want
Yeah.
to make sure that when it comes to you, the investor, examining, studying who you're going to work with, that you're aware you have the tools to ask the right questions, right, Marcel? It's always by asking the right questions.
It's always about asking the right questions. And, it's so important to understand that in this process of selecting advisor, you are doing the hiring, right, Mark?
Yes.
They're doing the
Yes.
hiring. And, we talked about something last week about a fiduciary about being a fiduciary. And that was last week's episode, I believe.
Yes.
And we want you to go back and watch that one. If you don't know what that is, we explain it there for the sake of time. We won't get into it now. But there are things, just like if you are an employee, and some of us, quite a few of us here are business owners, we understand that there's a process to hiring and it's the interview process, right, Mark? The interview
Yes. It
process.
really is. Yes.
You have to make sure that they're qualified And you're doing the same thing when you're bringing on an advisor to support you and your family and your, like say, your wealth building journey. You are hiring. And it was really interesting. We know this. We talked about it last week, how Madoff did not allow questions. And I'll touch on that again. But I think the biggest thing is that in the docu-series, you really saw that people were not taking the approach of doing the hiring. They felt like they were just lucky to be in his presence.
Yes.
So I just wanted to, just want to make sure that you understand that process. And since, okay, for the sake of time, Mark, I know we have to wrap things up. So I'll just say, of hiring, speaking of hiring, and first of all, there's such great comments. I'm going to go back and look at
You
these,
know,
Mark.
right?
There's so many great comments. These. So I just so appreciate that. But speaking of hiring, we have a free gift for you. I mentioned it last week, and I said at the end of the series, we are going to provide you with a free gift. So woohoo, because who doesn't like
Mhm.
free? And you already know that we're going to bring you great resources that empower you, that allow you to learn and grow and just really feel more in charge, feel the leadership position that you are in within your family legacy. You are legacy leaders. So, as a legacy builder, we are giving you a free advisor guide. It is a free financial advisor guide, which includes 10 questions to ask a financial advisor candidate. So, what you're doing is this is questions that you can ask an advisor that you want to work with, including us. And I think even for those who are already our clients, so many of you here are our clients, these are questions that you want to know about us and know about any advisor you're thinking about working with. So if you're checking out, you're interviewing about 2 or 3 advisors, ask them each these questions and see what they come up with. Now, again, this is important. I talked about it. This guide is so important because if you remember, in the series, like I said, Bernie's major red flag is that he refused to answer questions. He intentionally disempowered people. That was intentional. Of course, he had a lot to hide, but in doing so, he was taking the power away from the clients. This guide that Mark and I put together is specifically designed to put you in the driver's seat where you belong and give the power back to you, the investor.
Mhm.
So that is what this guide is about. And just asking just a few of these questions, not even all of them, but just asking a few of these questions will give you a better understanding and provide information about the skills that really matters, that you really need to know in order to understand the financial planning process. So even just reading the questions, even if you don't ask them, reading the questions is going to give you some insight on, oh, what are the things I need to be thinking about?
Exactly.
Because what do we say, Mark? We always talk about sometimes you just don't know what you don't know.
Exactly.
And that's one of our biggest objectives as financial planners and individuals and clients that work with us. One of our goals is always to provide them with knowledge so they can now ask us more questions. So by
Mhm.
the like Mark, by the end of the process with you, they have a lot more questions to ask you than when they started, don't they?
Exactly. And that's what we want.
That
We
is,
we we want that environment where you can ask the question. So that way when you leave our meeting, you have a better understanding. And more importantly, you have peace of mind. That's what we're
yeah.
looking for.
Yes, that peace of mind. That's key. And I know who doesn't want peace of mind. Y'all put in the chat, say peace of mind, if that's what you're looking for. So just so we're all in agreement. We definitely want to make sure you have that. So as we wrap up here, I want to provide you with this copy. If you want a copy of this guide, because we don't want to just post it, we want to make sure everyone that wants it gets it and can find it. Because Facebook acts up, you post things and you can't find it. So if you want a copy of this guide, type in the chat guide. All right, let's drop the word guide. drop the word guide in the chat, and then Mark's going to go ahead and share the link. We're both going to share the link. We'll come back after the broadcast, continue to share the link. So just drop guide and you're going to get the link. And if you're catching the replay, go ahead and drop guide. You're still going to get this link and you'll have the information that you need. All right. So Mark is dropping the link there in there. And then I'll go ahead and make sure that each of you get the link. So check out the link in there. You'll see it there. You'll see it in the chat. All right, guys, let's wrap up here. Thank you all for participating in this 3-part series. Oh, you guys, this community is so awesome as usual. But Mark, I have to admit, this got to be one of the best Facebook communities.
I have to agree. Might be a little biased, and I'm okay with that.
There we go, bias. See, this is a good bias. We might be small in number, but oh my goodness, so massive in quality. So yes. I'm really grateful for each of you. Thank you. Continue to drop guide. We'll make sure you get your guide and the free financial advisor guide. Thank you again. We will see you next week for Tea Time Tuesday as you continue to develop the behavior that will build your legacy. See you next week. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.